The year was 1878, and the Rio Grande was nothing but a thin brown ribbon of spite cutting through the Texas borderlands. It separated dreams from dust, hope from ruin, and men from whatever was left of their souls. Gold fever had returned like a plague that summer. Wild whispers carried on every hot wind about a lost Comanche cache, Spanish bars of gold hidden deep in the jagged folds of the Chisos Mountains. Enough yellow metal, the stories claimed, to buy a man a new life, a new name, and the sweet forgetting of every mistake that had brought him this far. Elias Thorne was both brave and foolish enough to believe every word. 43 years old, lean as a rawhide whip and twice as scarred, he carried the kind of eyes that had stared too long into the smoke of too many campfires and too many battles. The Confederacy had taken his youth on some muddy field in Tennessee. The frontier had taken everything else. His land, his cattle, his illusions. His last mining claim had played out bone dry 3 weeks earlier. His mule was half dead from thirst. His pockets held nothing but regret and a few grains of worthless dust. Yet the rumors refused to die. One more river, one more chance, one more ride south into the unknown. He saddled what was left of his gear at first light, the sun already rising like a brand pressed against the earth. The sky was the color of old iron, and the wind carried the dry taste of failure. Elias rode with his jaw set and his coat loose in the holster, telling himself this time would be different. The crossing came at a place where the Rio was shallow enough to curse at, but deep enough to drown a man's last scrap of pride. The water was warm and muddy, sucking at the mule's legs like it wanted to pull him under. When he reached the far bank, the land changed in an instant. The rocks grew sharper, the shadows taller, the silence heavier. The air itself felt watched, as though the desert had eyes and they were all fixed on the lone white man who had dared to cross. By noon they found him. 4 Comanche riders appeared without sound, materializing from behind a red mesa as if the stone itself had birthed them. Their ponies were painted, their faces calm and unreadable. Elias's hand dropped to his Colt out of pure instinct, but he never cleared leather. The oldest among them, a man with eagle feathers woven into silver braids that caught the brutal light, simply raised one hand. No words, just the quiet authority of someone who owned this country long before any map had been drawn. They took him, not with ropes or violence, but with the calm certainty that he had no other choice. By dusk, Elias sat bound before a low fire in a hidden camp beneath the Chisos. The flames danced across faces that had known this land since time began. Across from him sat Chief Two Eagles, broad-shouldered, weathered, eyes like dark flint that missed nothing. Two Eagles spoke first, his voice low and steady as rolling thunder. "You seek what is not yours, white man. Gold that sleeps in our mountains. Why should I let you live when so many of your kind have taken and never given back?" Elias met the chief's gaze without flinching, though his mouth was dry as the dust he'd ridden through. "Because I know things your people don't. Blasting powder, timbering shafts, how to read the rock the way your scouts read the wind. I can find what others have missed for 200 years. Give me a chance, and I'll share whatever I take." Two Eagles studied him for a long, uncomfortable silence. Then his eyes shifted to the edge of the firelight, where a woman stood watching, tall, straight-backed, with eyes like polished obsidian and the bearing of someone who had already buried one husband and refused to bury another dream. "This is Kaya, my daughter," Two Eagles said. "She has lost a husband to raiders from your side of the river. She speaks for the young warriors who would see your scalp hanging from a lodgepole before morning." Kaya stepped forward into the firelight. Her voice was low, sharp as a knife edge. "Let him prove his worth. Tie him to me. If he brings death to our people, I will be the one to end him. If he brings life, then perhaps the spirits have a use for him yet." Two Eagles considered her words, then gave a single solemn nod. The ceremony was simple and ancient. Under a sky thick with stars that looked close enough to touch, they stood before the fire. A Comanche elder chanted in the old tongue, words that rose and fell like the wind through canyon walls. Elias muttered a half-remembered verse from a Bible he hadn't opened since the war. A single cord of rawhide bound their wrists together for the space of a dozen heartbeats. Symbol of union, symbol of chain, symbol of something neither of them yet understood. When the cord was cut and the vows spoken, Kaya turned to Elias. There was no warmth in her gaze, only the hard truth of survival. "You will probably be dead within a month anyway," she said quietly. "Try not to take me with you." They crossed back north at first light. The border settlement they rode into stared openly. "Squaw man," the whispers followed them like dust devils. Elias ignored every stare. Kaya rode beside him in silence, her eyes scanning the horizon the way a hawk scans for prey. She already seemed to know trouble was coming long before it showed its face. The first weeks were harder than any claim Elias had ever worked. He treated her like a necessity, someone to cook, someone to watch the camp, someone to keep the fire alive. She performed every task, but always in her own way, with a quiet competence that slowly began to unnerve him. One night a flash flood roared down the arroyo without warning. Kaya had read the sky hours earlier, the color of the clouds, the feel of the wind. She moved the horses, the gear, the fire pit itself to higher ground, while Elias slept. He woke to dry earth beneath him, and the smell of coffee already boiling over fresh coals. He said nothing, but he noticed. As the months turned the seasons, Elias hunted the gold with Kaya at his side. She showed him hidden trails no white man had ever walked, taught him to read the signs left by wind and rain and the slow movement of the earth itself. No Spanish bars ever glittered in their pans, but they found something better, water in places that should have been bone dry, sweet grass for a small herd of cattle, a sheltered draw where they built a rough cabin of stone and cedar. She taught him the language of the land. He taught her the patience of the prospector's pan, and between them words began to grow, few at first, careful, honest as the desert sun. Then the bandits came. They were the same hard men Elias had crossed years earlier, claim jumpers led by a scarred killer named Reddick who believed the gold was already in Elias's hands. They tracked him across the Rio like wolves on a blood scent. They struck at dusk in a narrow canyon, while a sudden sandstorm whipped the air into a choking, blinding wall of grit and fury. Gunfire cracked through the howl of the wind. Elias took a slug high in the shoulder and went down hard, blood soaking his shirt. Bullets ricocheted off the canyon walls like angry hornets. Kaya moved like a shadow in the storm. She climbed the sheer rock face with hands and feet that knew every hold. From above she rolled boulders down onto the attackers, started controlled smokes that turned the canyon into a maze of confusion. When Reddick charged Elias's position with a knife in his teeth, Kaya dropped behind him like a ghost, her own blade flashing in the dying light. "Elias, now!" she shouted over the roar. He lifted his Colt with his good arm and fired. The last bandit fell. The storm passed as suddenly as it had come. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged sound of their breathing and the distant crackle of the dying fire. Elias lay there bleeding, staring up at her through the settling dust. I thought I was done," he rasped. Kaya knelt beside him, her face streaked with dirt and smoke, and for the first time there was something softer in her eyes. "You still might be," she said quietly, "but not tonight." No gold was ever found. The legend remained just that, a story men would tell around campfires for years to come. But the land had given them something far richer. The played-out claim slowly became a working ranch. Cattle grazed where only dust had ruled before. Neighbors who had once whispered "squaw man" began to stop by to trade, to share water, to nod in quiet respect at the pair who had survived what the desert had thrown at them. In time, Elias built a wide porch on the cabin, facing the distant Chisos Mountains. He and Kaya would sit there together at sunset, watching the sky turn the exact shade of gold he had once chased across the Rio. He crossed the Rio for gold, but rode back richer in ways no map could ever mark. A man who thought the frontier had nothing left to teach him learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the treasure isn't buried in the ground. Sometimes it rides beside you. If this tale of redemption touched something in you, do an old cowboy a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe for more true-hearted Western yarns just like this one. New stories of grit, grace, and hard-won love drop every week. Until next time, ride safe, keep your powder dry, and remember, sometimes the best treasure rides right beside you. Thanks for listening, partner.